Nowadays, you can sue for anything.
Yeah.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a hate mail heads up.
And I get sick when I'm around. I can't stand to be around. I hate everything about you.
All right, let's see here. The subject line says, 10 things that bug me about you. This comes from Art Lee, who calls himself Wolf Dancer. Okay.
Wolf Dancer.
That's almost as good as the professor from what is it, the University of Pennsylvania at Indiana?
Yeah.
Who calls himself Talks to Trees. That's what he calls him. He calls himself Talks to Trees.
Do they talk back?
I think they probably do sometimes, depending on what we're...
think so.
Yeah. Okay, these are the 10 things that bug me about your program and the right wing in general. Number one, you seem to think that everyone who disagrees with you is a commie or a Marxist. Well, that's not true. There's people on the right who disagree with me. Neocon! Didn't even know what one was until somebody called me that. Do you know the meaning of those words? What, commie and Marxist? Do I know the meaning of the words commie and Marxist? Did you just start listening, Art? Then he goes on to say, red baiting went out in the 1960s. He's referring to the McCarthy era. Red baiting went out in the 1960s. Art, red baiting was a pejorative term invented by Marxist sympathizers in the media and Hollywood to scare us off of investigating them. I think history has proven pretty much that while Mr. McCarthy was a bit, shall we say, rough-edged in his approach, he was fundamentally right. Now he goes on to say, I call myself a Saul Alinsky leftist. And never have or never will join any political party. I remember the 50s all too well. Well, you need to do a little history on Mr. Saul Alinsky, who turns out to be Hillary Clinton's mentor. Saul Alinsky was a freaking communist. Number two, you also seem to think that everyone who does not support this president is a traitor to our country. What happened to the right to protest? Well, first of all, I don't think that everybody who does not support this president is a traitor to the country. And as far as the right to protest, yeah, you have a right to protest. You have a right to protest until the war begins. When the decision is made to go to war, then you shut up. Because if you continue to protest, you are sending a message to the enemy, keep it up! Keep it! Kill a few more of our guys! We're starting to cave over here! We'll eventually get our way! Come on! Number three, you go along with your party line that killing terrorists in Iraq would make the world safe from terrorism. Well, first of all, it'd make us safe from terrorism. You know, let me say, what would make me think that? We were hit in September 11th, 2001. It is now almost September of 2005. That would be 4 years without a strike on American soil. Okay? Despite repeated warnings from Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri and Osama bin Laden himself on tape, despite Mr. Abu Ghaith, spokesperson for Al-Qaeda, who repeatedly said on television, the storm of airplanes will continue. They will continue to rain down upon they will continue to rain upon the Western world. The reason is we put our guard up. We put our money and our blood and our treasure where our mouth is. We went to Afghanistan and we killed Al-Qaeda's headquarters and we moved on to Iraq. Anyway, he says, I don't see how you can say that. Well, I think I just explained how I can say that. Can't you see what's happening around the world? London being the latest attack? Yeah, because all-inclusive, tolerant London has, for decades, pacified and mollified these radical imams. Now they're being tossed out after the bombing, after the fact. Okay, well, we didn't want to do it that way. I guess you might change your tune if we get attacked again. And who will you blame them? Who will you blame then? I'll blame the terrorists. Of course. Number 4, bitch in the ditch. How very Christian of you. I love people that know how Christian I am. A woman who dishonors her son's death and sacrifice just to further her wacko Michael Moore agenda, filled with lies and distortions about 200,000 Iraqis being killed, is a bitch in a ditch. Number 5, always downing the ACLU. How come you never say anything about your good buddy Bob Barr, who's working with them on the Patriot Act? Hey, Art, Bob Barr's been on this show a couple of times talking about his work with the ACLU on the Patriot Act. I would hardly call that never talking about it. I don't agree with him. It's one of the few things Bob and I disagree on. Then he goes on to say, but wait, Was it not Bob Barr who wrote and attempted to pass a bill that would take all pagans out of the military? So much for First Amendment rights. Do you remember anything like that?
No. I don't understand what he's saying about Bob Barr. I find him to be blameless, Bob Barr.
Yeah.
Really, he's done a very good job.
I don't get anything. And by the way, if you had the facts about the ACLU, you would, well, first of all, here's a fact about the ACLU, Art. It was founded by Roger Baldwin, an avowed communist, who published on many occasions his plan to use the Constitution to subvert our rights, to undermine our culture, and to turn this into a Marxist state. Okay? You want a fact about the ACLU? There's one. By the way, if you had the facts about the ACLU, you would know that they don't support pedophilia. They simply supported the right to have a web page, just like the KKK and Stormfront. Okay, let's clear this up right now. First of all, the ACLU is defending a man who has been accused of killing a child in Massachusetts based on information that he gleaned from this webpage. This webpage tells pedophiles how to lure children, how to rape them, and how to get away with it. Now, the KKK and the Stormfront are a couple of laughably leftover organizations from the past. The people who march through Skokie don't scare me. They don't scare anybody else. They're out there waving their KKK signs and their Nazi uniforms. They're fools, and they don't really threaten anybody. But the North American Man-Boy Love Association does threaten me. They threaten the well-being of every child in America, and also they are threatening the culture because they want to normalize pedophilia. That is their goal. Number 6, George Soros, MoveOn.org. Have you ever researched Richard Mellon's Scaife? We know Richard Mellon's Scaife, and
him.
He doesn't look anything like Darth Vader. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And he's, you people on the left have got this vision of this guy that is just absolutely, totally wrong. And no, we're not on the payroll. The Heritage and Hoover Foundations? What about them? Well, a lot of common sense coming out of there. How about the 7... Now, get this. He wants to know if we know about the 7 Texas friends of Karl Rove who funded the Vietnam veterans against the war. Well, I don't know. Maybe Karl Rove actually does have 7 friends who funded the Vietnam veterans against the war. But what kind of guilt by association is that? I mean, does that mean that Karl Rove is really an underground operative working inside the Bush administration on behalf of liberal wackos? In which case, he should celebrate the 7 friends of Karl Rove who started the Vietnam veterans against the war. Then he goes on to say, and what about Coors, the beer people? And I'm thinking, what? So I go to Snopes.com and I type in Coors and I get, claim Coors financially supports Nazi groups. Status, false.
Oh, really?
So much for that one. Number 7, the moral issue. Do you think that people who are not Christians are not moral people? No. Never said that. What gives anybody the right to say because they do not believe in God the way that they do that they're a bad person? I don't usually talk about my religion. I walk the walk, and I'm tired, so very tired of being told that I'm not moral. I never said that. Number 8, Islam. All Muslims are not terrorists. Yes, but most terrorists are Muslims. Look it up. All Muslims do not want to take down the USA. Really? Well, we had a Muslims Against Terrorism a demonstration held in Washington, D.C., well publicized. 50 Muslims showed up. President Clinton is no longer the president. Wasn't 8 years of trashing him and calling him names enough? No. No, not when you consider that we continue to live with his legacy, like the misinformed or the organization didn't want to be informed, 9/11 Commission. 9/11, the Gorelick Wall, we still don't have the truth about that. And then you turn around and you get mad because people trash Bush. Oh, well. And finally, I must remind you that I am an American, as well as everybody who disagrees with this administration is a U.S. citizen. I love my country, as does anyone who values the right to dissent. Okay, again, we're back to the subject of dissent. Okay, dissent is all well and good until the shooting starts. As a leftover of the Vietnam era, you demonstrate your ignorance in this regard. Talk to somebody from World War II. Okay? When you have an enemy and they're killing your kids, You all line up shoulder to shoulder, and you show the enemy that you're all on the same page. The dissent stops. If you want to criticize after the war's over, fine. But dissent during a war is sedition. It is heckling our soldiers from the sidelines. It gives aid and comfort to the enemy, and it reinforces their idea that if they just kill enough of us, we'll go away. The kind of idea that was reinforced by politicians in Vietnam, the kind of stuff that was reinforced by Mogadishu and by Beirut. Unfortunately, that was on Ronald Reagan's watch. So anyway, I've said my piece.
So that was his top 10 list of things that bother him about you. That's what that was all about, huh?
Yeah. Why?
Well, because I thought, since you were going to... if he gets to talk about the 10 things that bother him about you, I want to talk about the 10 things that bother me about you. Okay?
Et tu, Brute. Et tu, Brute. All right, okay, fine. I'll take it. We'll take a break. We'll come back. And...
10 things that bother me about
him. That's true.